Hello, 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 everyone. It is Thursday, so that means I am here live with another expert in women's health. And today I have my friend and fellow FDN, Luna Hart. Luna, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I am delighted to be here with you today because I feel like we're going to be talking about something that people don't talk about enough. And you have you have a topic called the fifth vital sign, your period, and I really wanted to talk about that in the context of detoxification because I feel like we live in a very toxic world, and I don't think we're attuned to the fact that we've got these little clues and signs that our bodies are always giving us that we need to be paying attention to if we want to take real ownership of our health. So, before I dive into all of that, can you just tell me why this is such an important topic for you and how you got to where you are right now?
Thank you. It's always such a long story to synthesize into a shorter conversation. But my health journey did start when I was very young. I had the chronic strep throat as a kid. And when I had, doctor's visit after doctor's visit, my stepdad, who was a pharmacist, he actually wanted to help me stay out of the doctor's office. So he gave me my own bottle of amoxicillin. And I actually took them as vitamins growing up. And it really, in all respect, he actually just didn't know. He was never trained about antibiotics. He was a trained pharmacist, but this was literally like 3 decades ago, and probiotics didn't exist, and even talking about the microbiome wasn't a conversation. So he just didn't know. He thought I was doing me something good. He thought he was keeping me out of the doctor's office. And it was literally when I was 19 and I kind of was off on my own, and I didn't have antibiotics, and I had strep throat, where when I realized that I had something wrong. I had literally a codependency with antibiotics. And remember calling him up and just being like, "Hey, I have strep throat again." And he was like, "You're a big girl now. You need to go to the doctors and get your own antibiotics." And I remember just starting to question what was going on at that moment. And thank goodness I found a naturopath, and she just set me down and she was like, "You need to figure out another way. You cannot continue taking antibiotics. You need to find a way to heal yourself, rebuild your immune system and your gut health." And so that was kind of like the beginning of the story. And I was 19 and I'm 43 now. And yeah, what happened was just, obviously extreme gut imbalances. But at age 21, I actually lost my cycle, my period, for 7 years. So from age 21 to 28, which is like a perfect seven-year cycle within my 7 years of living, uh, I just completely stopped bleeding. And it really was due to the fact that there was just so much inflammation in my body. My gut was a mess, and my liver was overwhelmed, just completely overwhelmed by toxins and unable to process or like even create a period. So I had to pull myself out of that response. And yeah, that's really the journey that set me forward, was just wanting to find a healthful way to come back to balance, without band-aiding and just covering over symptoms. So I really wanted to understand why my body wasn't bleeding, what was going on with my digestion, and really get to the root cause. And so, yeah, it just led me on a huge long journey. And I was so grateful when I finally found FDN and the functional lab testing. Also, I just feel like at this point, with everything I've learned through my experience of rebalancing my gut and my hormones, I'm able to help my clients on such a deep level because I have that insight plus the functional lab testing that I do.
My God, Luna, I think you did you see my jaw drop when you said that you were he was handing it out to you like sweeties, like candy. That's just so shocking. I mean, I have a similar story, but mine was nowhere near as like, I mean, I thought mine was bad because I was literally, I think I was on 16 courses of antibiotics in 1 year in 2010. And
Mm.
that was when, like, I mean, I had problems before, but that's when things got really, really ramped up and gnarly. But I never lost a period. So, 7 years, like, what don't, isn't it like if you're 3 months without a cycle, don't they declare that like menopausal?
And I had hot flashes, I mean, definitely vaginal dryness, like,
What?
the weird thing is back then, like, those are all signs when you have hot flashes and vaginal dryness, it's a sign that you have no
No
hormones, especially
estrogen.
estrogen.
Yeah.
And, when I would go to doctors back then, they would test my hormones and say they were all normal. It was the most insane thing, and now, flash forward as an FDN, I'm just like, "No." It was just improper testing, and improper, lab ranges, that they were
Yes.
assessing my hormones with. So, yeah, it was just really unfortunate, and the only thing they had for me back then was birth control, and when I year after year, I just actually said no to that because that would have been completely band-aiding my experience. That would be, forcing kind of what would be a withdrawal bleed, not a true menstruation. My body wouldn't be menstruating, but I would have these hormones and I would have this withdrawal bleed and make me feel like I'm normal, but the fact is it wouldn't get to the root cause. And then eventually towards the end, someone offered me some bioidenticals, and I was just like, no. I'm 27, like there's got to be a way. And I just remember even going to like the biggest fancy specialist and just not having them look deeper, like not asking about my gut, my diet, my stress levels, my environment, all these important things that were obviously factors in the reason why I wasn't menstruating. So,
Oh my God, girl. Like, we all have these exact same, like, cookie cutter stories in so many ways. Like, we've all seen multiple ologists, we've seen the specialists who are so quick to dismiss us. Like, I had the gastroenterologist just look at me and say, like, well, there's nothing structurally wrong with you. It must be in your head. I'm like, well, I am not imagining being doubled over in pain every day with my stomach feeling like it's going to explode. So, I am so sorry that you experienced all of that. But the gift in it is that you now can really empathize with people who are being dismissed by their doctors, by women who are being, ignored, dismissed, unheard, and you're able to give them something that they can't get anywhere else. So, you these so I kind of want to talk a little bit more about the period being a vital sign. So the fake
mhm,
bleed that they were trying to create with the pill for you, that's a huge issue because I hear so many people, and I was one of them. I was 19 and I was having some problems with my cycle back then, so they
mhm,
wanted to put me on the pill to regulate my cycle,
mhm.
and it doesn't regulate your cycle. So can we like break through that myth right now? Could that be like one of the number one things that people take away from today?
Yeah, and it's still like, I mean, so many people come to me and they tell me, like when I ask them about their cycle and they've been on the pill, they're like, "Yeah, I think I have pretty regular cycles and yeah, bleed every, and I don't think people understand that the pill is actually regulating this experience of a cycle. So instead of you having a cycle, you're having these artificial hormones that are orchestrating a cycle. And then all of a sudden, there's the placebo pills. And when you hit those placebo pills, that's when your body has a withdrawal of the hormones and it will have a shedding of the endometrial lining at that point. But it's not a true menstruation. A true menstruation's where you will have an ovulation and the egg leaves the ovary. And that doesn't happen when you're on birth control for reasons of the birth control. They're trying to prevent you from being fertile. And I think the unfortunate thing is like I also currently work for a natural fertility clinic too. And so we're working with couples to try to help them get pregnant. I also work with, people trying to get pregnant in my own business also. But yeah, there's just obviously a huge struggle for people to get pregnant these days. And I think what's going on is at a very young age, women aren't revering their fertility and realizing how precious this fertility is, and how we actually, at this day and age, with the level of toxins and stress that we're enduring as humans, we have to teach our young women to focus on fertility, build it up through life, take good care of it. We do not need to be shutting it down and stifling the fertility at this point, because what we're seeing in, women who are in their 20s, 30s, and 40s is like they're struggling to get pregnant and having those balanced hormones even if they don't want to get pregnant. So
Yeah, I can relate. I actually missed my fertility window because I had been on the pill for so long. And then when I came off of it, I'd gotten married when I was 28, my first marriage. And I came off of the pill thinking I was going to get pregnant like immediately. It didn't happen. And then we tried and tried and nothing happened. And what ended up happening is that I was having some problems with cervical erosion. So I would bleed mid-cycle when I was ovulating. After sex, I'd bleed. And, the doctor's solution then was, well, we'll put you back on the pill. And I'm like, well, tell me why I have cervical erosion. And they're like, oh, it's because you were on the pill and it softened your cervix. And I'm like, so why would I go back on it? Like, why would this be a good thing? So I argued with them a lot. And, the solution then was to have something called a leap excision procedure,
yeah.
which is basically they take a giant hot poker and cauterize your cervix, which is
Mhm.
horrendous. And I don't wish that on anyone. And as time went on, anytime I went and I checked my hormones, they were always like, well, it's going to be very difficult for you if you do want to have children. I ended up splitting up with my first husband. And when I was in a long-term relationship after that, I tried in my mid 30s to get pregnant and it just wasn't happening at all.
Mhm.
So these things, they do have an impact, like far-reaching effects. Particularly if you do things like genetic testing and you find out, like in my case, I have like slow genes, the COMT genes and I'm an undermethylator. So I looked into all of these things because I wanted to know, like, well, why isn't this happening for me? And obviously I kind of screwed things up big time. You mentioned the liver. I messed up my poor liver by being on birth control for so long with all the fake hormones, by taking all the antibiotics in 2010, like the 16 courses of it.
Mhm.
I had a dental surgery that year too. Anesthetic is another thing. Like pharmaceuticals generally screw up your liver and they screw up your gut. So anyone who's saying like, oh, well, just take the omeprazole or just take the lansoprazole or just take the antibiotics or the steroidal cream or the take the anti-inflam, and they don't tell you when you're supposed to stop, and it's like you're going to be doing that for a while. That's not someone you want to be seeing as a practitioner. If it's a doctor telling you to just stay on drugs, drugs will destroy your immunity. It will destroy your gut health. It will destroy your hormonal health. It will screw up. I was going to say another really bad word. It's going to screw up your liver. um, but so now that you help women like with reversing all of these issues and you've reversed it yourself, you now have periods, even though you were menopausal in your 20s, right? So hear this out, folks. Like you can change your body. It is possible.
Mhm.
The same way that you lived yourself into distress and dis-ease and discomfort, you can live yourself out of it if you know what to do. And the best way to know what to do is to work with someone who actually knows how to do that and who's been there before. So tell me about how you got back to where you are now. You said you studied FDN. For people who don't know what FDN is, tell them what that is.
Yeah, functional diagnostic nutrition. And it's, you know, basically allowing us to have a deeper insight using functional lab work to really see the things that aren't able to be seen and to actually get real live data on someone's hidden stressors. So that's what FDN is. And I find it to be extremely helpful for my clients. And so, yeah, I'm an FDN and I'm also a fertility awareness educator. And that's it actually was a huge training. It was a 2-year training and it had a lot to it. So I know everything about looking at a cycle chart. And just to share about that is I love the lab work, but like to be honest, the looking at the cycle charts is more like looking at how every month is coming along, because the period and the cycle is kind of like your monthly report card. And especially when you're working with an FDN, you are given a protocol to heal these underlying factors that we're finding in the functional lab work. And then what's really cool is that you can use the cycle charts to see the progress. And so when I have a client that charts her cycle and is working with me anywhere from 4 months to a year, I'm able to, by looking at, like, I always ask for cycle charts before our session. And when I look at that cycle chart, I immediately know before talking to her exactly how she's doing. So it's kind of like it's so neat. So I get like an eye on basically her hormone status by looking at her cycle chart. And just to share more details on that is what I mean by cycle charting is two biomarkers that I like to look at is definitely charting cervical fluid. And when you're looking at cervical fluid, you're looking at estrogen in the cycle. And the other biomarker is the basal body temperature. And when you're looking at basal body temperature, you're looking at progesterone in the cycle. And so by looking at those two biomarkers, you're looking at two major sex hormones and you're hopefully seeing them improve. And there's, kind of the ranges of optimal that you're hoping to see the temperatures and that cervical fluid being presented in. And especially for my clients who are coming off birth control and they come to me and they're not ovulating, that's another thing we're really looking for is like we're looking to confirm ovulation every single cycle. Okay, yep, ovulation occurred. I'm just finishing up with a client who came to me and she wasn't ovulating. And she had been cycle charting, not ovulating. And she's so happy. She's just like ovulating every cycle now. And actually, I asked her, like, we have like, I think like 2 more sessions together. And I said, so what are some final goals you have? And she's like, she just didn't have anything. Like she's like mastered her goal, like which was to ovulate and to have balanced hormones. And I'm just so happy for her. So I think that's, a good example of her. And I guess for me, just to say, yeah, I'm 43. I just ran my Dutch test and it's amazing. I mean, I have some work to do in the adrenals, but as far as my sex hormones go, I was like, yeah, you've been doing your work, and I kind of like, had that like pat on my back because I'm like the person who didn't bleed for 7 years in my 20s. So to see my estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone just like totally within range, I was like, oh my gosh, that's going good. So
I love that. You're walking your talk, which is the most important thing for any practitioner to do. I want to talk about in the last sort of couple of minutes that we've got here, that lady who has no more goals because she's achieved her goal of balanced hormones. Imagine what it's like when you don't have to worry about what's my period going to be like this month, what's my body going to be doing, am I going to have sore boobs, am I going to have like diarrhea, am I going to be constipated, like all the things that come up for women every single month because of the unpredictability of when they're not taking care of their cycle and their hormones. Imagine when you don't have those stressors and those worries any longer and your brain is suddenly clear and you have energy and bandwidth to think about other things, like other cool things that you could potentially be doing, and you don't have to be like freaked out or worried about your body not working with you. So I love that this lady's like, I don't really know what to do now because I've hit all my goals. And you're like, okay, now I can help you like figure out some real life goals, not just some physical goals. So I love that worked out so beautifully for her. How long do people typically work with you for?
I have a 4-month program, a 6-month program, and a year long. So yeah, I would say, for the hormone work, I would like to see someone for 6 months. And then, for more chronic cases, a year. But
Mhm.
yeah, simple stuff, just optimizing 4 months.
That's beautiful. I mean, and it's really amazing how quickly the body can start to turn itself around as well when you start giving it what it needs. So, I commend you for like everything that you're doing, for all these women that you're helping, like getting them back to, aligned with who they are and tuned in to what's going on inside of them and what that means for them. Because we live in this day and age where everyone is so disconnected from their bodies from each other because they're so plugged into their devices or to whatever else is going on around them. And the way that, the fact that the period is the fifth vital sign, like you said, it's that monthly report card. It is such an easy way for us to tune in to what's going on with us. Like, am I healthy? Like, when people say, oh, I eat healthy and I exercise, I'm like, yeah, but are you actually healthy? Are you cellularly healthy? Like, do you have I call it my 3 Ps. Are you peeing? Are you pooping? Are you perspiring every day? And then the period is the fourth P. Like, are your detox pathways working well? And if they're not, if someone says, well, no, I go to the bathroom once every couple of days or once a week, or I can't go unless I take a laxative, I'm like, okay, well, you're not healthy. You might look good, but just because you look good doesn't mean you're necessarily healthy. Like, if your body's not detoxing easily and doing its job, then there's something to work on there. So I love that you also have, I mean, you do something every spring, don't you? Like the spring cleanse. Yeah, that's really cool. How do people reach you, and if they want to know more, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, my website is Hart of Health, and it's my last name, Hart of Health, and that's my website. And then I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Luna at Heart of Health. Those are probably the best ways.
Okay, fantastic. And you and I chatted before we decided to hit record and to stream. The aligned cycle, that's one of your resources that you want people to have access to.
Yeah, on my website, there is a guide to getting off birth control and creating hormonal balance, and that's called the Aligned Cycle Guide. And then the cycle charting guide might be also nice too. It's called on my website. It's called Empower Yourself Cycle Charting Guide and Presentation. So
Okay,
they're both
cool.
filled with tons of info. So.
All right, awesome. Ladies, please, you need to go download these things, watch the video, check it all out, follow Luna. She is such a gem. She's so passionate about helping women, find natural solutions to their chaos, to the hormonal chaos, and get you back to yourself so that you don't have to have goals or like, oh, I just want my periods to be normal. You can have bigger goals. We want you to have dream bigger, live bigger. So Luna, thank you so much for being here today, for being such an awesome guest, for sharing all your insane knowledge and wisdom and your sweet, compassionate heart with us.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.